What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Relationships Made Simple for Men podcast with me, Bryce Bauer. Today, I want to talk about how to control your anger. There aren't many things that can get you in more trouble than losing control of your anger. Oftentimes, that means saying something that you wish you didn't say. And at its worst, it can mean acting out violently. If we're going to talk about anger, we really have to break it into two different parts. There's the emotion and then there's the behavior. So for a lot of men that don't know how to work with their emotions that well, they're really just looking at their behavior. How can I change this? One of the easiest ways to not act out is to just shut up and remove yourself from the situation. That's not a bad start if you're feeling overwhelmed, but it's not going to deal with the core issue. And ironically, the more that you try to suppress what you're feeling, the more it will grow into resentment, which can then lead to bigger blowups down the road. I like to watch a lot of crime interviews. And the most common thing I hear from men who have acted out violently is, I just had enough. I was done. That is a scary place to be. And I get scared. A lot of men have the potential to get to this place. Because if someone gets to the place where they have so much anger and shame built up that they're losing their grasp on reality, a lot of times the last move is to self-detonate. I know that sounds a bit extreme, and I wanted to mention it because the further you get down this road, the less control you have. And you probably won't know when you've crossed that line until something bad happens. And for some men, that bad thing happening can actually turn into a good thing, but you never know what the cost is going to be. For instance, even though I was young, I had a series of really negative events in my life. My emotions were out of control, especially anger. I got into fights, I got in trouble with the law, and eventually I totaled my car while high on Xanax. I was feeling pretty suicidal at the time, and I left a lot of damage in my wake. But luckily, it wasn't enough damage that I couldn't come back from it. So I went to drug and alcohol treatment, went to a lot of AA meetings, went to therapy. I got my life back on track at an early age. But let me bring this back around to you, because the majority of people that I work with and who probably listen to this podcast are working professionals in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who are married or who have been married and who have children. You're smart, you're into self-development. Your behaviors probably aren't as extreme as what I went through. General adult male anger, frustration, and overwhelm will present more as irritability, resistance to feedback, and depression. Men often cope with that through overworking, debating, porn, and substance abuse. Basically, these are all good ways to avoid feelings. But there's a cost. If your wife is forced to live with someone who's irritable, shut down, depressed, or who struggles with angry outbursts, she's going to get tired of it. She can only manage you for so long. This is what I hear a lot from women. They have difficulty putting words to it, but they essentially feel like their role is the manager of the household emotions. Women are also conditioned to take on this role, so it can feel natural. But in this day and age, they're starting to see that this takes a toll on them. Eventually, they start saying things like, I need you to go work on yourself. And this is a change from the status quo. I think a lot of men think that that means going to 3 therapy sessions. Okay, I worked on it. But that is so far from what's needed. I'll give you some advice on being a client, because I have been and still am a client in many different settings. It's up to you to do the work. The professional is only a guide. So if you come into a session just trying to get a box checked, your behavior probably won't change much. Think about it. You have 120 something waking hours in a week. So if you're going to get help 1 hour a week or 2 hours a month, that's not a lot of time. It's up to you to put that guidance into practice. I'll give you an example. I worked with a guy who came in to see me because his anger had gotten out of control and he had punched a wall. He put a hole in the wall. He hurt his hand a little bit. He scared his wife, his kids, the whole deal. This was out of character for him. He had never done that specifically before, hit something. This was a major crossroads. His wife was adamant that this behavior was not okay ever, which I agree with, and so did he. He didn't know what to do about it. So the work included us looking at how he got to this place. It turns out that in a lot of ways, this outburst was a cry for help, a cry to be seen. Look at how much I'm struggling. Okay, and then we back it up some. When did you start feeling this way? Oh, really many years ago. When we had our second child, we became more disconnected. I was working a lot, feeling the financial pressure. I lost touch with friends. And then the next question is this a familiar feeling? And he says, yeah, it was. I felt like this all the time growing up. There was pressure from my parents to do well in school. They weren't very emotionally attuned to me. I buried my feelings. My strategy to deal with it was to work harder. That kept my mind off the feelings, and I received positive reinforcement from the world that what I was doing was good. There's a lot more to anyone's story, but that's what it was in a nutshell. My guess is that at a very early age, he wasn't getting his emotional needs met. His parents weren't sitting him down and asking him how he was really feeling. Left on his own, he didn't know how to deal with that. And what do we instinctively do when we don't get our needs met? We feel the very normal feeling of anger. You will see this with babies. They need a lot of attention. And so if you look away from them, leave them alone, many babies, at least eventually, will start to get upset. Their nervous system is stressed. They'll start screaming and crying. This is how we're wired. We know the minute we come into this world that we can't do this alone. And if the adults leave, we're in trouble. We don't know this on an intellectual level yet. It's something our body knows. So even though our brain begins to develop, a lot of kids don't know that this is what is happening. They can't understand the gaps in their needs. And I'm not saying that children should have their emotional needs met all the time. Of course not. That's part of growing up and being human. You have to deal with it. But if they weren't given an education on how to deal with it, they will develop their own survival strategies. So now you can see the arc of this man's relationship to his own emotions. It's not hard to imagine his adult self taking on the mind of his younger self, a small child, and punching that wall. That is usually the first step. You need more information. We have to make sense of it. That's a big part of my job. The second part of my job is showing people what it's like actually having the felt experience to feel compassion for ourselves. We have to be able to connect with that younger part of us. It's okay, buddy. Even though you didn't get what you need, I'm here for you now. We're not putting all the blame on our parents because they probably didn't know what they were doing or not doing. We're taking responsibility for our current life situation while also feeling empathy, just like we would for any other child that we care about. That's a big chunk of the work right there. And I recommend, at least in the beginning, feeling into this on a daily basis. How am I really feeling? What's really going on? Can I rest into compassion for myself? This will start to change your behavior because the softer we are with ourselves, the softer we're going to be with the people around us. But there's still the chance, and we don't want to underestimate this, that given a specific trigger, we can lose our shit. Everyone's got those red hot buttons. So that's where we need to remind ourselves as men that there are certain things that are completely off limits. This actually resembles sobriety quite a bit. When someone is first sober, using can never be an option. You have to be willing to do whatever it takes not to use. In early sobriety, I remember there were times that I'd get really stressed out and I'd go to the gas station late at night and buy a Black and Mild, a cigar, drive around and smoke it. Now, here's the thing. I didn't even like cigars. I knew that staying up late wasn't good for me. But for some reason, that helped me not spiral into a place where I would pick up alcohol or drugs again. And looking back, I can see that even though this wasn't the most healthy way to deal with it, it was still a better choice. So I want you to think about this when you look at the behaviors that have really gotten you into trouble. At bare minimum, you need to do whatever it takes so that you don't act out. That's the base. If you're more likely to do this when alcohol's on board, the best advice I can give you is to stop drinking. All bets are off once you have substances on board. If you get all riled up late at night and get into arguments with your wife, you may have to cut off communications past 9 p.m. until you can get a handle on this. Instead, call a friend, meditate, go to the gym, get in the jacuzzi, whatever it is. You want to clean up your track record. Think about being a judge. Someone comes in with 14 prior arrests and they say, "This time I feel really bad. I swear I'm going to change." What do you think as the judge? You're trying to be objective while also using your intuition. You're probably going to say, "No, I don't believe you." If your track record sucks, your wife is not going to believe you. Don't be resistant to that fact. In fact, I'd suggest owning that every time. You're right. I did X, Y, and Z. That makes sense that you don't trust me. A lot of times the benchmark for change is somewhere in the neighborhood of a year. You have to look at 365 days of behavior to get a good read on what's different. It's not that you can't change a lot in a month or two, but that's not enough to really build trust. Going back to another story, I had a client who seemed to be doing a lot of work, sessions, reading, podcasts, journaling, but he would still have an outburst every 2 or 3 months on average. Now I realize that I could have some limitations here. I'm not a guru or a magic worker. And there's a part of me that knows that this isn't all about me as the helper. Each person has to take extreme accountability for their life. They can try all the different types of therapy and modalities and read all the books, but there's something deeper. Why did I stay sober? There was something in me, some fire that got lit that I never wanted to go back to how I was living my life. I didn't want to have that experience again. I was done with drugs and alcohol. Did I fake it until I made it? Probably on some level. But to this day, it's the same idea. I'm a no to that. When I was younger, some of my friends tried to convince me that I could drink a little bit. While I was traveling, I got made fun of a couple times because I was the only one not smoking or drinking. That shit didn't matter to me. And so there's a decision that each one of us needs to make. Am I done with this pattern? It doesn't mean that the work is still not all ahead of you, but I believe that you can make a decision to be done. There is this saying in AA. There's actually a lot of really good sayings in AA. And one of them is, you don't have to believe, you just have to believe that I believe. And so that's what I'm offering to you. Even if you can't find hope that you're capable of making big changes in this area of your life, I believe that you can. And maybe in a way, just hearing that does something. I will end the podcast there. I'm really getting excited about this Instagram stuff, making short videos. You can check me out at Bryce Bauer Coaching, and I have my next men's retreat happening September 25th to 28th in St. George, Utah. You can email me at bryce@brycebauer.com or go to my website, www.brycebauer.com, to learn more. I'll see you next week.